Hi, welcome to the Macabre Emporium.
Let me get my emotional support cat.
Okay.
To be quiet and keep the kids quiet, since he was getting anxiety and he didn't want to kill children.
Gertrude's daughter even got to join in on what they considered fun.
Tell us about the giant turtle.
Alan never showed up, nor was he ever heard from again beyond that point. Welcome to Macabre Emporium. This is episode 19.
Yes, and if this is your first time joining us, welcome.
Welcome. So we watched Megan this morning, this afternoon rather. And that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Commercials definitely made it seem very stupid.
Yeah.
It was pretty good though.
But once you watch it, it's a lot better than it was. Then you realize it's made by the same people that made the Purge movies. And what else? Because their little opener for that studio had like all their movies in it. And there was one other one that I recognized, but I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
It's from Blumhouse.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Those guys.
Yep. It was a good movie. If you have a chance to watch it, watch it.
Like she said, the trailers make it look stupid. Give it a shot. If you have Peacock, it's on there. It's not going to cost you anything extra. If you have Xfinity, you have Peacock for free.
Yeah.
So what do you got to lose other than your time? And if you don't like it, you can just turn it off.
Yes.
And then one of those stupid Ranker.com articles can come up as this movie's so scary that people turn it off halfway through. No, because it's boring as shit. That's why people are turning it off.
But this wasn't boring. This was quite interesting. Still, don't like dolls.
Right. I took it more of a newer adaptation of, I guess you could say, Child's Play for the most part. The killer toy, but more advanced with being up times with technology, with AI advancements and robotics.
Yeah.
Is what they're basically doing. It's not a serial killer trapped inside of it like in Child's Play was.
Yep.
But anyhow. So, what are you talking about this week, Sarah?
I am going to be talking about a haunted library.
No, shocker. You talking about a haunted library.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It just was kind of funny how you had asked me from the kitchen, like, what are you doing this week? And I was like, paranormal. You're like, oh, I was also looking at paranormal. So it's the fucking paranormal episode.
Yep.
What are you doing?
I'm doing, I don't know, let's see, paranormal. But.
What?
But it's also kind of true crimey.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of the Ackley house?
Nope.
Well, you're going to find out about that.
The Ackley?
Yeah, the Ackley house.
Ackley.
Ackley.
Okay.
It is the only legal haunted house in the United States.
No, sir. Haven't heard about it. Want to.
Well, all right. Let's get started then.
The library that I am talking about is the Williard Library in Evansville, Indiana.
Okay.
So, I'm going to start you with some history.
Wow, that's an odd turn. Sarah giving me history.
Well, background into the library.
I know.
Yeah. The Williard Library is the oldest working private donation library in Indiana. Williard Carpenter, also known as the pioneer of public charity, was the original owner and donated the land for the property. Williard had established a trust fund in 1867, stating that he was choosing to establish and endow a public library with that money. He did so in hopes of it becoming an institution that would be used toward the improvement of moral and intellectual culture for the people of Evansville. Williard was an agent for the Underground Railroad prior to the Civil War. He had incorporated his concerns about the rights of African Americans into his rule that the library, and this is quoted, be maintained for the free use of all persons who desire to consult it. This is why it was later donned a public library. Because, all of public, not just the white people of public. In its time, it was really shocking. Basically a social experiment for the later half of, the 19th century.
Okay. Well, if I remember correctly, Indiana was a union state, so it kind of does also make sense.
Okay. Williard would finance the construction of the library, which started in 1876 at First Avenue and Pennsylvania Streets in the middle of Williard Carpenter's Field. which had at one point been the backdrop for circuses. That's where they would, set up their little wagons and tents and whatever. A bad economy had forced the construction of the library to stop in 1877. The foundation of the building had laid there for 5 years without being touched. In 1882, construction commenced yet again, and Carpenter vowed he would supervise the building for the rest of his life. He worked side by side with the architects, hired all of the workers himself, and made sure that only the absolute best materials were used. And there would be a formal opening for the library held on March 28th, 1885. Inside, the ceilings were high and the windows large. They were as big as they were because of the lack of electricity back then. So they got most of their light, from the sun. By night, they were hanging kerosene lamps in the windows to give the light that, they lost when the sun went down. Outside, the building had, the standard corner tower you see in Victorian buildings. There was a rich color contrast on the roof due to use of white stones and brick. There were Gothic arches over the windows, and terracotta was used a lot for the exterior decoration. The decoration in the terracotta was mostly in the form of roses and owls, which were there because they were symbols of wisdom.
So this place looking super fancy on the outside.
Have you seen pictures of it?
It's been so long since I have. I don't remember what it looks like.
It's really pretty. The library is home to a large variety of genealogy and local history collections on its second floor. In August of 1976, the collections opened and included 50 state references, family histories done in book, microform, and manuscript, as well as loose paper formats. They had newspapers from, whatever the local newspaper is in Evansville.
Okay.
I didn't think to look up the name. But they have those newspapers all the way back from 1821 to present time. Church records, Catholic diocese records on local cemeteries and funeral homes, numerous online databases, 3 large search engines, which is Heritage Quest, Genealogy Bank, and Ancestry Library. The library hosts an annual event called Midnight Madness, where the library is open until midnight throughout the entire week for research purposes, for those that can't get there, in the morning or whatever.
Right.
Genealogists and anyone else interested come from all over the world to research their family's history. As of 1972, the Williard Library was placed on the National Register of Historic Places, so it's definitely important.
Yeah.
I mean, first off, it's a library.
Well, yeah, but with its colored history at this point.
Yes. Yep. With the library holding so much history and ancient text, it's not very surprising that numerous people have come forward stating that the library is haunted. In fact, you can pretty much expect it to be.
Right.
Being that old and, who knows what all happened on the property.
Right. It's like, oh, look at this old-timey Victorian building. There's definitely ghosts in there.
Anytime I see a Victorian house or a Victorian-looking building, I'm like, there's some history in that motherfucker.
Yep, there's a ghost in there.
Because from, my prior episode of, Victorians and their fascination with death, all of the people that died in their homes and then had funerals in the homes. That's a lot of trapped fucking energy. It all started long ago with a simple question. Is the Williard Library haunted? In order to get that question answered, the team behind the library decided to put up cameras in each of the rooms within the library, and they chose to stream them online. Now, I've told you this, me and my oldest sister would sit there, and I don't even know how we found the link to watch these webcams. Right. We would sit there for hours and just watch them.
Right.
Hoping that we spotted
something.
You
guys wanted to be the one that did it. Yeah, that you mentioned the webcams. I now remember that part of it. Mm-hmm. But some of the things I remember, the people had done. One of them sticks out in my head. Somebody photoshopped SpongeBob fucking images.
It wouldn't surprise me. But there's, yeah, we used to watch it a lot. But in the daylight you can see the library on the webcams, obviously, right. And it's very pretty inside. Makes it look very big, the angle that they have the one camera. Anyways.
Do they even still have them?
I'll get to all of that stuff.
I know, stop jumping ahead, damn it.
Yeah, stop. But seeing as though my oldest sister and I used to watch it, and now we both live in Indiana, and I literally had just looked up a topic that I was planning to do, and then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's look up haunted libraries. Let's see if that library is still around. And it is.
Right.
Yeah, still up and running. And cameras are still up as well. With the cameras on 24/7 and a whole lot of people watching them, things started to get interesting.
Right.
The website itself became a virtual ghost hunting mecca. You can take a virtual tour with the Williard Library director, Greg Hager, and see if you can find anything hidden or, out of place that should not be there.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you, before we get into the actual hauntings and things that have been seen, the things that happen most often but are not seen. They just happen. The water being turned on and off is one that happens quite often. Feeling cold spots or feeling cold envelop you, basically. Smelling strong perfume, women's perfume. The things that go bump in the night, they hear noises all over the place, which you can chalk that up to it being an old ass building.
Yep. With its probably balloon style construction with the wood expanding and contracting
and yeah, the inside is a lot of wood. The staircase itself is, it's a Victorian staircase. It's pure solid wood and gorgeous. Books and furniture would be moved. The librarians would put them back where they belong, and then they'd come back in the room when there's nobody else there, and they'd be moved again. They'd find odd items throughout the library, like shit that people wouldn't leave behind. People have reported feeling their hair being touched and yanked a little bit. And then ladies, a lot of women have reported that they're ladies dangly earrings, that they could feel those being tugged on as well. Now, with the unseen out of the way, we're going to get into the scene.
Ooh, spooky.
Ooh. Okay, so one of the most common things screen captured on those webcams is that of the Gray Lady, or Lady in Gray. She's called both things. She's most often seen in the children's reading room, which is in the basement of the library. Creepy.
Yeah, how fitting.
The Gray Lady was reported over 60 years ago. Obviously, that predates webcams and all that fun shit. An employee at the library had come to work after a treacherous walk in the cold to start his first shift, and it was night shift. He saw her not long after he arrived. However, this was not the first time that she was seen. The first time she was seen was by a custodian in the library in 1937. That was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
The custodian was there doing his nightly cleaning routine and walking the building, making sure everything's, up to par where it's supposed to be. This was around 3 a.m.
Oh, how?
That was Salem saying it was the witching hour, bitches.
Right, of course, how appropriate. Salem chimes in on this episode.
Yep. So, he headed towards the furnace room, and he claimed to see a female ghost dressed in a glowing gray Victorian mourning type of dress. He stated that she had a veil on her head, also gray, which would kind of lead you to believe that she was in mourning attire.
Right. Well, and this was also before color photography and film, so yeah, she's gonna be in black and white.
Oh my god. He said he was taken aback and absolutely terrified. He dropped his flashlight and took off in a panicked run, which, to be honest, I would probably do the same fucking thing. Like, I'll talk about paranormal and shit all day long, but I think if I ever came face to face with one, I'd either nope out by passing out or shit myself and run. One of those would happen before the other, I'm sure.
I don't think you would.
I don't know. So when he finally got his wits about him again, he returned for the flashlight to check the area again. Gray lady was nowhere to be seen.
Who would have thought?
I know. A ghost vanished. At this point, he's questioning himself like, what the fuck did I just see? Which I would also do. Even if you can clearly tell what it is. Like, the fuck was that?
Right.
Yeah. When he returned the next day to start his shift, he decided he was done. And he quit right there on the spot. That was enough for him. One and done for this guy. Since then, all of those that had sought her out, and even those that haven't, have reported spooky and unexplainable happenings within the library. In 2007, psychics visited the library, and they were able to verify that ghosts had been there. Ghosts, plural. Numerous paranormal teams had been there as well, with a plethora of equipment, and they also agreed that the library was haunted. I wonder if Zach Bagelbites ever went there.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe he did before he, had his television show, or maybe Taps possibly could have at some point.
There's some drama going on right now. It's all over TikTok about his stupid ass.
Who's Bagans or the Taps guys?
Zach.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't
You'll have to fill me in on that later.
I haven't even looked into it, but it's all over the place. Anyways, several employees of the library have reported that they've seen the ghost of the Gray Lady. There were lecturers from the University of Southern Indiana that visited, and they said that they saw the ghost looking into water. Like, they didn't say it was like in a tub,
no, okay,
a sink, anything. Just she was looking into water. Police have responded to security alarms going off and say that they saw 2 ghosts in the upstairs window. 2. Not 1. 2. The police did not mention the lady in gray, just 2 ghosts.
Well,
2 ghosts, 1 library. Sorry, I had to.
There's this episode's name right fucking there. I already fucking know it.
I wasn't even thinking that, but probably. Anyways, what were you going to say?
I'd say with the local police, they probably already know the stories of the lady in gray, so they're probably like, it's whatever.
Yeah.
It's probably just the lady in gray again, and then they're like, oh, fuck, there's 2 more.
Yes.
Or the skeptic officer's like, oh, there's no such thing until he saw that.
Probably. So while there are 2 that show up more often than others, obviously one is the lady in gray. She's the most prominent one. But there's also a black mass that keeps being seen on the webcams.
I'll see. Now that was one thing I didn't know about this library there.
Yes. Margaret Meyer, a former employee of the library, said that the Gray Lady had seemingly been disrupted by construction on the building and had followed her home while the children's reading room was being renovated. Margaret and her sister both said that they could feel cold air touching them and that they could smell really strong women's perfume that neither of them had owned or had on.
She was like, fuck this noise, I'm out. Hey, I'm coming home with you guys.
Right. Betty Miller, a former librarian, stated that she had heard a heavy stream of water running upstairs on the 2nd floor, even though it was after closing and she knew that she was alone. She got brave and went up to see what it was and was shocked to find the faucet in the bathroom had turned itself on. Members of the Tri-State Genealogy Society claimed they experienced paranormal activity within the library. 2 of the members, who happened to be working alone in the library, reported smelling a strong, pungent perfume while they were researching in the cemetery records area. That perfume.
Right.
I wonder if it smelled like mothball.
No, probably not.
No?
Are you saying it was because she's like, it was supposed to be like an older lady?
Yes.
No, probably like
lavender or some shit.
Something very flowery, more than likely, because of the time period. And
lavender is very pungent.
Old lady perfume smells, basically, is probably what comes to mind.
Yeah. There was a normal library patron that had come in to do research and jumped in the elevator to head to the floor that they needed to be on. So the elevator that was in the building at this time, I don't know if it's been upgraded to today's type of elevator, but it was like the old school wrought iron, gates that you had to close, and then you had to pull like basically a wall down before it would move.
Right. Well, since it's being on the Registry of National Landmarks, more than likely it has probably not been updated.
Oh, that's true.
Because with those, that they can't change its appearance. It has to stay the way that it's supposed to.
Gotcha. Well, then maybe it's the exact same.
If I remember correctly, that's part of why the International Circus Hall of Fame had such a hard time with the windows and everything. Is because they had to be of an original appearance. Right. So windows that they needed were going to be quite expensive.
Eek. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Maybe. This patron that was there had no idea that the library was supposedly haunted. Mm-hmm. But guess who popped in to ride in the elevator with him?
SpongeBob, that I mentioned earlier.
No. Who? The Gray Lady.
Of course, the Gray Lady. Because my next guess would have been the Hat Man if that was wrong.
He said he was terrified and his fight or flight kicked in, but where the fuck are you going to fly to when you're trapped in an elevator?
A 5'5" box, wrought iron cage, basically. Where are you going to fucking go?
Like, there is nowhere to fly to. I mean, you can keep running from corner to corner, but that's only going to get you so
right?
far.
It's like, Alexa, play Scooby-Doo chase music.
Oh my god, the fucking Monty Python.
Or Benny Hill Yakety Sax, basically.
Yeah. Benny Hill, is that what it was?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Monty Python?
Nope. Benny Hill Yakety Sax is what that is.
You know what I'm... Do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So, who is the Gray Lady? Do you know?
Nope.
Oh, well, me neither. That's the end of the story. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, see you. Bye, guys. Thanks.
Okay, bye. Some people believe that the Gray Lady is the spirit of Louise Carpenter, who was one of the daughters of Williard. Williard died on November 3rd, 1883 of a massive stroke. And it is very well known that Carpenter had extremely strained relationships with all three of his kids. So there was Louise, Marcia was her sister, and then their brother Albert. Williard had written in his will that Louise and her husband would receive nothing from his estate, and that included any rights to the library, anything. Instead, the majority of his finances went towards his businesses as well as the library. Louise had sued the library in the 1890s over money she felt she was owed to by her father. The case was lost. She even went as far as going through the appeal process, only to lose the court case again and walk away empty-handed. This, of course, caused upset, and Louise never got over it. They say Louise is the one haunting the building now because she's, trying to lay her claim on that property.
No, that's kind of an interesting take on that.
Uh-huh.
That's like the most petty ghost ever. Well, if you didn't leave me shit, I'm going to haunt your building. Prize construction forever.
She felt that should have, been handed down to her, but,
How are you going to have something handed down to you that was built for everybody?
Correct. Which is why she lost her cases.
Right.
She's bitter. There was a parapsychologist, Lucille Warren, that visited the library in 1985 and saw the Gray Lady. During this encounter, she was again seen looking into a pool of water. Lucille felt the connection of her looking into water was not like her looking into a sink or a bathtub or whatever. She feels that she actually drowned in the canal that is very close to that property.
Okay.
And that she wasn't haunting the library in particular, but instead she was haunting the land the library was built on.
Okay.
Which it makes sense. But yeah, she had a feeling that she was drowned in the canal, more than likely suicide. Whatever scenario it is, or if it's not one of those two and it's something completely different, the Gray Lady was never menacing or gave off bad feelings to anybody. It's a ghost. They're going to scare the shit out of you.
Right.
She was always just kind of there, never bothered anybody unless they saw her, of course. Then they, panic would take over and made it worse.
Right, so she wouldn't change form when some guy says, "Get her, Ray."
Correct.
Didn't even catch that.
I did. It was a Ghostbuster reference. However, that thunk was Salem's head on the table.
Which is weird that he's wanting to be... That he wants this much attention from us when doing a paranormal episode.
Correct. And with that being said, like there was no bad feelings or, she didn't come off as menacing or anything.
Mm-hmm.
You would think if it was Louise that she being as like jaded and bitter about the situation with her not getting the money from her father's estate,
right,
she'd be doing shit to like harm or terrify. But here this gray lady is just chilling, existing, whoever it is, she's still there. She's still roaming. Mm-hmm. And that's her home, whether she knows it's a library or not. One thing that I had forgotten to mention is that it seems that the gray lady didn't just stick to like normal routines that a typical, I guess, ghost would do. Because they'll stick to the room or whatever that...
Right. Like they've always said that it's like a playback.
Yes.
Of their past lives for the most part.
Okay. Gray lady didn't do that. She didn't stick to routine. She's been seen everywhere in the library. Each room, the stairs, the elevator. She doesn't shy away from construction areas or expansions that have happened.
Well, when you're a free roaming vapor, you get to do what you want. Ghostbusters reference number 2. She's been seen there too, like in the newly renovated, like new attachment to the building. Right.
So, those areas weren't there when she was alive and kicking. So,
So she's just wandering.
She's a fucking roamer. This one,
right?
She no routine. Like she's constantly in all other rooms, just hanging out. She doesn't just come out at night either. Like she's been spotted all times of day and night. So unlike the typical ghost shit that you hear, she was different. So now we're gonna get into some fun facts. Oh, little tiddly bits.
I was wondering if they're not tiddly bits this week or fun facts or anything.
Both. Okay, so I did go in and look at the website, and they still have all the cameras up to watch.
Okay.
They have also added more cameras because it was like 3, I think.
I don't remember.
It was 3. They had the children's reading room, like the main part of the library with all the the rows of tables and chairs,
right,
and then a hallway. That's all they had. But now they have 6.
Well, yeah, they had to expand the building, so they had to add more, apparently.
Yep, so...
and they're probably still better quality than the banks.
Probably. So, yeah, 6, they have them set up in her most commonly seen spots, which is fucking everywhere.
Right. Oh,
so,
yeah. Huh? What are her most commonly seen spots? It's just an entire fucking building, so how do you narrow that down?
Right. So they have one in the view... they have one in the children's room, one in the basement hall, one in the research room, one in the stairway, one in the children's story room, and one in the adult services room on the first floor. It's a lot. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I looked at them earlier, and they're all still working, and yeah, you could still see them. Kind of made me happy because we spent a lot of time on that website. Right. God. In October of each year, the library holds a ghost tour. The first tour happened in 1990 for 800 lucky people. The event was such a hit that it continued on to become an annual event that you could plan to attend. They have a calendar of events for the library online on their website, and you can look like closer it gets to October, because they still do them. It's every year now. So yeah, you can look and see when it's happening, possibly go, Library's still open every single day of the week. Most libraries that I've ever been to are always closed on either Monday or Sunday.
Right.
This is open every day. And open for visitors. Even if you don't live in the area, they still let you come in, browse.
Right. Because, I mean, I don't know if, like, of any library, like, if you, like, being out of town or you come in, you look at a book, you put it back, you know, they're going to be like, hey, you don't live here, put that back, get out.
Well,
get
yeah,
on, get.
obviously,
you know?
But
obviously trying to check something out, that's not going to work, obviously.
Correct. But, yeah, that's my...
I don't know, maybe we should add that on to our list of dark tour spots,
yes.
maybe.
Agreed.
Seeing as we've been to one and we need to probably go do some more at some point.
Yeah. One place I would really love to go to, I was looking at it earlier actually, is the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in California.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've said that before.
Probably.
That's one place I really, really would love to go. And Anne Rice's mausoleum in New Orleans. Would love to go there. Anyways, that's the end of mine.
All right.
Yay. Great lady. But yeah, go look at the website and watch the webcams. And if you spot anything fun, screenshot it, and you can actually submit those to the library's website.
Right. That's where I remember from the old submissions was like the librarian from the Ghostbusters got photoshopped in.
Yes.
Somebody like photoshopped, I think, SpongeBob because he was like the hot new thing at the time.
Uh-huh.
And just a lot of stupid Photoshop jobs people did.
Uh-huh.
But they still posted them up there anyway. And then there were some screenshots of smudges and things from what I can remember. But like I said, it was so long ago when I was at that website. So
yeah, I was like early 20s, I want to say, when we were watching that.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
So we're probably looking at like 720p cameras being like the hot new fucking thing.
But yeah, that was my whole thing. And if we ever make it down that way, I know it's a lot way further south than we ever travel.
Right.
But if we ever find ourselves in that area, I want to go to the library.
Well, I'm sure if it's not too far out of the way.
Well, obviously. So I said if we ever find ourselves that way. But yeah, what you talking about, Willis?
So even though I've already made 2 Ghostbuster references.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sure you should be proud that there's only 2 that I made.
In my story, how many are in yours?
Actually, 1, because it was known as the Ghostbuster ruling.
Okay.
So, yeah. Actually, no, 2, because of a quote. But anyhow. So, technically, I'm not making them, so 0 from me.
Well.
For the most part.
Correct. Okay. Let's hear about this.
So, you ready to hear about the Ackley house?
Ackley house.
The only legally haunted house in the United States?
Yes.
All right. For most of us, when we think of tales of true crime, there are stories and cases of murders. Sometimes it can be bank robbers like Blackbird Sarah that went over last week. But for my portion of this episode, I'm going to go for 2 birds with 1 stone. True crime and paranormal.
Oh, fucking double whammy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, on the banks of the Hudson River of Nyack, New York, sits a beautiful 6-bedroom, 3.5 bath Victorian home constructed in 1890. One La Vida place is coincidentally painted in light blue, which is also known as haint blue in the southern United States, which I will get into later towards the end about that.
What did you say? Haint?
Haint blue. So take ain't, put an H in front of it, and it's a haint. Which makes this home so special, besides it being a well-kept Victorian home, is that it's America's only legally haunted house. Now, I don't mean haunted house as in for entertainment as I covered in our Halloween episode. I mean actually a haunted house as in bumps in the night, full-body apparition type ghosts or free-roaming vapors type ghosts.
Ooh, free-roaming vapors.
There, you got one Ghostbusters thing out of me. In 1967, Helen and George Ackley would move into the 4,000 square foot home with their 4 children, Cynthia, George, Kara, and William. Between 1960 and 1967, before the Ackleys purchased the home, the house sat vacant, but I could not find a reason why it sat vacant, probably because of how big this house is.
Okay, yeah.
But it was also described to be run down as well, so that can be also a huge reason to why it sat empty for so long, because who wants to dump a bunch of money into a money pit house like that?
Yeah.
In the first few weeks, Helen spent her time alone at the house to get things in order before the family would finally move in. In these first few weeks, some of the neighborhood children that were nearby playing some type of ball game, didn't specify what, but it came up multiple times, would stop their game and come ask Helen some questions about, did you buy the house? Do you have kids? She would reply to these children, yes, I have kids. They'll be joining me in a few weeks and I own the house. She would also invite these kids to come in and look at the empty house. Some of these kids giggled as two of them hung back from the others and would ask Helen if she knew that she just bought a haunted house.
So the kids knew, but she wasn't told upon buying the house.
Because it was like in some of the sources said that these kids would see faces in the windows.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Later that same day, a plumber from the area was hired by the Ackleys to come look at the plumbing of the house to see what any possible repairs needed to be done. And he would become concerned for Helen's safety being there alone, as he told her he kept continuously hearing footsteps running up and down the stairs at least 6 times while he was there at the house.
Damn.
Already hearing about the ghost from the kids that questioned her earlier outside, she tells them not to worry and she might as well get used to it since she's going to be there alone. Later that night, Helen and her husband George are turning in for the night. She noticed the hallway light was still left on, and she found it weird that George would request the light to be left on. Mm-hmm. So when she asked him, since when did you start sleeping with the light on? He said, since the first night we moved in here and I don't want to discuss it. Good night.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no information you can find about any reason of why he wanted this light left on. That was it.
Must have been a good one.
Yeah. The Ackley family would spend the next 20 years in this house and wouldn't counter anything malicious. Helen would recall most of the activity would be French doors in the home opening on their own, along with windows opening on their own as well. Also, the light over their dining room table would start suddenly swinging on windless days and then suddenly stop as it started.
Huh.
So, your regular poltergeist type of activities for the most part.
Not a poltergeist this time.
Not a poltergeist this time. Still need to watch that.
Yeah.
George would travel frequently, and this would leave Helen alone at the house with the children. And one of Helen's experiences would come one winter night while looking out a window facing the Hudson River. As she stood there, she said she would feel a cold presence very close to her, and every hair on the back of her neck would stand up. She would say out loud, "It's beautiful on the river, isn't it?" And as she would say this, she could feel the hair on the back of her neck starting to lay back down, and after a few more minutes, she would turn to leave and feel this cold presence following her down the hallway, and then she would say out loud again to this spirit, she's assuming that's what's going on, "Thank you for sharing the view with me. I'm going to bed now. Good night." And Helen would go on to say that she didn't feel this presence walking down the hallway with her anymore.
Okay.
One of Helen's other experiences came when she was painting the living room, and the only time she actually saw one of the spirits. While she was on top of an 8-foot ladder, she would say that she could feel what would be eyes watching her.
Okay.
But it wasn't like an unfamiliar feeling to her at this point. And as she painted, she would stop and say, "I hope you like this color. I hope you are pleased with what we are doing to this house. It certainly must have been lovely when it was first built." She would describe this entity that she would see to manifest himself as, she described with that he was smiling with his hands clasped around his crossed knees, nodding and smiling in approval, wearing an immaculate light blue suit and a cap, with a white fruffle stock at his throat, a white hose, and shiny black pumps with buckles, with piercing blue eyes, an apple-cheeked face, and thick white eyebrows.
Okay.
So, colonial time, wealthy person for the most part. Helen's daughter Cynthia would see on 3 occasions a hooded figure, but was quite sure that it was a woman. All their experiences was nothing malicious. She just described her as a hooded figure for the most part. But Cynthia would almost daily be woken up by her bed being shaken lightly, as her parents would do to wake us up for school for the day. And this was the same reason why it was happening to her, is so this spirit in the house was waking her up every day so she wouldn't be late for school. And Cynthia would also recall one time during her spring break that the ghost would try to wake her up for school, and she spoke out loud telling them, "I don't have school the next morning and I want to sleep in." The next morning, she wasn't woken up by the shaking.
Huh.
Helen would also say that her children would receive gifts from the ghost. Cynthia would receive tiny silver sugar tongs when she would marry a man by the name of Mark Kavanaugh. Mark Kavanaugh also would have experiences in this house as well, too. The first happened on Christmas Eve. I was home alone due to various activities. I was playing Christmas Elf in the living room, putting gifts together. It was totally quiet in the house. After a while, I kept hearing a muffled conversation coming from the dining room around the wall. I would get up and walk over, and nobody was there. I felt like I was being watched. I had purposely turned on every light in the surrounding rooms. I was getting nervous. Then my future brother-in-law suddenly pounded on the door, making me jump out of my skin, and the talking stopped. And then his second incident happened. It happened in our bedroom on the 3rd floor. It was a clear, dark night. Sin, as he would call Cynthia, had already fallen asleep and I was drifting. Then I heard the bedroom door creak and the floorboards squeak. My back was to the edge of the bed. Suddenly, the edge of the bed by my midsection depressed down, and I felt someone lean against me. I went literally stone stiff. I was speechless and I could hardly move. I was able to twist my neck around enough to see a womanly figure in a soft dress through the moonlight from the bay windows. It felt like she was looking straight at me. After about a minute, the presence got up and walked back out of the room. I finally relaxed enough to shake my wife out of a sound sleep, acting like a toddler who just had a nightmare. Later, I reflected on this incident. I believe the ghosts were checking me out because they knew my wife and her ex-husband. They probably wanted to see if I was a quote-unquote good person for her. It was that the woman used to shake Sin's bed every morning to go to high school. After that episode, no other sightings occurred. I did get the impression that they did approve of me, and my wife and I were married about 18 months later. So that was one of the non-family members' experiences of the house, other than the neighborhood kids and the plumbers. Like, even the neighbors at times would hear voices from inside the house knowing that nobody was home.
Damn.
Helen would actually go on to write an article that was published in Reader's Digest named Our Haunted House on the Hudson. After this article was published, the Ackley's home would start showing up on local ghost walks and become a popular topic around town as well. And this is where a lot of the experiences came from, more of depth detail than where I could find like your cut and dry sources.
Okay.
In 1989, George would unfortunately pass away, and along with the property taxes that were starting to get out of control in the area, Helen would make the choice to sell her beloved Victorian home and move to Florida.
Aww.
With a soft real estate market at the time, the house would be on the market until 1991, when a Wall Street trader by the name of Jeffrey Stambosky and his wife Patrice wanted to move out of New York City to Nyack. They would put down about $32,500 of the $650,000 asking price, which, of course, this came out to be over $1.3 million today for the asking price for the house, and $69,612 was what they would have put down if they were trying to buy this house today.
Damn.
Some of the sources claim that Helen's realtor did inform the Stambosky's that the house was haunted, and some sources said that it didn't. So I'm going, of course, put both versions of it in here. Mm-hmm. One source would claim that Helen's realtor did disclose that the house was haunted, and Jeff would laugh and say, "Well, we'll have to call in the Ghostbusters then." Where another would claim that Jeff had no idea that the house was haunted until a local resident informed him that it was when he was speaking to them about the property. A week after contracts for the sale were signed, Stambosky would request to meet Helen in person on the property to discuss the ghosts. Helen would passionately speak about the hauntings and the ghosts that resided in the house. After learning about these ghosts in the house, Jeff would request a recession, REESCISSION,
Rescission?
Yeah, it's
I don't know.
It's a legal term for canceling out contracts.
Okay.
He would request this for the contract, the sale, and damages for fraudulent misrepresentation by Helen and her realtor. Even though Jeff didn't seem too disturbed by these tales of the ghost. As, with his joke, you don't make jokes like that if you're, like, scared of ghosts for the most part. It was more likely that it was his wife that didn't want to live in this alleged haunted house. So when it came down to them finally closing in out on the house, or the rescission of this canceling of the contract, Jeff Stambosky didn't attend the closing, which caused him to forfeit the down payment of this house, and the New York Supreme Court would dismiss the action, and Stambosky would later would put in an appeal for this.
Mm-hmm.
During the appeal, the New York Supreme Court would rule in favor of the Stambosky, stating as they were not local to the area and could not readily learn that the home had he contracted to be purchased to be haunted. Justice Israel Rubin would go on to say during this appeal process, a very practical problem arises with respect to the discovery of a paranormal phenomenon. Who are you going to call, as the title to the song Ghostbusters asks? Applying the strict rule of caveat emptor to a contract involving a house possessed by poltergeist conjures up visions of a psychic or medium routinely accompanying the structural engineers and Terminix man on an inspection of every home subject to contract of sale. In interest of avoiding such unattainable consequences, the notion that a haunting is a condition that can and should be ascertained upon reasonable inspection of the premises is a hobgoblin that should be exorcised from the body of legal precedent and laid quietly to rest. So in plain English, he pretty much is saying that it seems a bit silly to have Zach Bagel Bites, as he is known for on other favorite podcasts of ours that we have adopted on ours now, to accompany home inspectors and exterminators on the inspection process during the sales.
Okay.
Is what he's basically saying. As the Stambosky versus Ackley case would become national news and this would also become known as the Ghostbuster ruling. Helen would have up to 50 potential buyers within a week of this court's decision. One of the prospective buyers was the amazing Kreskin, a renowned mentalist, which is a performer of highly developed mental abilities like telepathy, rapid mathematics, mind control, mediumship, etc. He wanted to buy this house to store his collection of paranormal objects, but she would sell this house in 1991 for $1.9 million, $2.1 million today, and then move to Florida. So, who was it that bought the house from Helen? A man by the name of Adam Brooks, who wrote and directed the film Definitely Maybe. He, even though he never experienced anything in the house himself. Also, pop singer Ingrid Michaelson which is best known for the song The Way I Am. You've heard it. If I played it, you'll like, oh yeah, I've heard this song. Because that's what I was curious on that, so I listened to it. It's like, once I heard it, like, oh, okay, I know this. I've heard this song. She would say that it was a magical home with an unbeatable view, which we both probably could agree when I showed you the images on Google Maps today before we recorded this.
Yep.
Rapper Matsiahu, going with it, would also own the Ackley house as well, but didn't have any experience of activity himself. The last time this house went up for sale in 2021, and it sold for $1.8 million.
That's a good chunk of money.
Yeah. In 1993, Helen was contacted by paranormal researcher Bill Marl and medium Glenn Johnson, who would disclose to Helen that they made contact with the spirits of one Levita Place in Nyack, New York. They would go on to tell Helen the poltergeist couple was more than likely Sir George and Lady Margaret, who lived in the region during the 18th century. Sir George, who is Helen more than likely saw while she was painting. Bill and Glenn would have published a book in 1995 titled Sir George and the Ghost of Nyack, and the book is obviously about the events that happened in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Helen Ackley passed away in 2003, and her son-in-law would place his odds that she returned to one Levita Place in the afterlife, as it was her favorite home.
Aww.
So with all that, because of this ruling in the state of New York, you have to disclose if a house is haunted or not.
Okay.
If it's a known haunted house, you have to disclose that it's haunted. So every once in a while, you'll see these images pop up of like Remax Realtor signs, and you'll see the little banner like where it would be like, 9,000 square feet or in-ground pool or some shit as a selling point, it would be not haunted.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
And when I was like looking up images for one of these signs, there you can find them in there's like one in New Orleans that's popped up, and I think there was one in Georgia that's popped up as well.
2 of the most haunted cities in the U.S.
So now, at the beginning of this, I had mentioned a color shade of haint blue. Mm-hmm. In Gullah culture of the southern United States, haints are a witch-like creatures seeking to chase their victims to their deaths by exhaustion.
Oh.
In Gullah culture, a tactic to ward off these evil creatures would be painting their ceiling of their porch or their entire house in blue, but it would become known as haint blue to trick them into passing through or make your house look like water, which haints cannot cross.
Oh.
So the painting of haint blue is commonly found in Georgia and Southern Carolina in Gullah communities today. Huh. So I'm not wondering if one of the previous owners, because some of the older pictures that come up of this house, it's red. And the more recent pictures, it's this light robin egg type blue, which is also known as this haint blue color.
That's interesting.
So I'm not wondering if somebody heard this and be like, oh, let's paint it blue for the most part. But if you were curious to see this house for yourself in person, I would probably advise against doing that, because the current owners, they're not thrilled too much of dark tourists coming around taking a look at their house. If you want to see the house, get on Google Images is your best bet.
Yeah.
Plus, it's on a very narrow one-way street from what Street View showed. But that's the Ackley House of Nyack, New York.
That's interesting. I've really never heard of that.
Yeah. Which it's actually right across from Sleepy Hollow, New York.
Which is also a bucket list place to visit. You know, Halloween time, spook time. That was very interesting. Yeah. I never knew about haint blue or any of that.
So maybe now that I come to think about it, maybe it's not really a true crime thing. I kind of thought that could be one because of all the legal proceedings having to do with this being somebody trying to get their money back over they saying that they were misled in buying this house or whatever.
Yeah. That was really well done.
Yeah, considering the amount of time that I banged this fucking one out.
Yeah, that was very quick. I was fucking impressed. You're like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do it, and then all of a sudden you flip your chair around and you pull your headset off and you're like, done! It's like, holy shit. Now, if only it could happen that way every time.
Right.
It doesn't happen that way.
So much time freed up for activities.
I wish I could say the same.
Yeah, I know. But anyhow.
Yes.
I don't know what else to say.
I don't either.
So, that said, I think...
Calgon, take me away.
Wow, throwback there.
I know.
Did they even make that still?
I do not believe so.
I don't know. But anyway, I'm starting to think it's time we close the Emporium up for the day, Sarah. What do you think?
I agree.
So until next time.
Remember to creep it real.
All right, bye.
Bye. Please check out our website at macabreemporiumpodcast.com. Join our Facebook group by searching Macabre Emporium. Like and subscribe on YouTube at Macabre Emporium Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Macabre Emporium. And if you have any stories of the paranormal, your local true crime, or weird history that you would want us to look into and possibly do an episode on, email us at macabreemporiumpod@gmail.com. Remember to follow, rate, like, review, and share whenever and wherever you can, and help us grow our little baby podcast.
And then his second incident happened in one of the... He had two different incidents, like experiences for the most part in this house. So the second one was, it happened in our bedroom on the 3rd floor. It was a clear, dark night. Orangey popped in my head as soon as I fucking said that, and I was trying not to fucking go any farther. All right, so I'm gonna start this whole fucking thing, this whole fucking second experience over.
I wondered what that goofy ass look was for.
I was almost expecting you to fucking do something.